Hello, you guys. This is the Pretty Coach. Please excuse the lighting. I'm trying to use natural lighting and it'll change. I had the other one on, but it's just kept changing too. So I was like, leave it alone. This video is going to be about what I wish I knew about relationships as a Hebrew Israelite, or rather, what I wish I knew about getting into a relationship. Oh, hold on. Hi, you guys, it's the Pretty Coach here, and I am coming to discuss what I wish I knew before getting into a relationship as a Hebrew Israelite. If that is something that you are interested in hearing my take on, then go ahead and get you some tea, get you some popcorn, a snack, whatever you're gonna do, and join me along on this little, join me in this conversation. All right. Okay, you guys, so hopping right into this topic, I do still consider myself a Hebrew Israelite, as that is part of my heritage and my ancestry, so that I feel can never really change, even if I'm not a practicing Hebrew Israelite. However, um, I think that practicing, hold on, let me get my charger and put it in. Practicing, I feel like that is subjective. So that's that. But hopping into what I wish I knew before getting into a relationship as a Hebrew Israelite. Um, I had my very first relationship, knowing who I descended from and that we were supposed to be keeping the Torah back in 2015. That ended shortly. It ended almost a year later. It would have been a year, but we did not make it. Um, I think that for me, the biggest thing that I took away from this is that just because we know who we are, or we believe that that is who we are, it doesn't change usually the ways that we engage with each other as men and women. I think that it should, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes our mindsets have not shifted. Sometimes we have wounds that have not actually healed. And when we get into these relationships, those things come out. And a lot of times or I can't speak for anyone else, but I'll say that in my case, I don't believe we had what it took to choose each other, because we were fairly new to one another. And on top of that, our doctrines were a little different. And so because it seems like we were trying to both change each other, rather than changing ourselves within the dynamic of the connection, along with other aspects of the connection, it didn't work. It did not last. It wasn't, I guess, built upon a firm foundation. And I don't even want to say I guess. I believe it wasn't built on a firm foundation, and this is the reason that it didn't work. I believe that we had doctrinal differences. So, for example, one of our common disagreements, or the thing that I kept harping on, when I met him, he lived with his mother. They were the surviving relatives of their family. So their dad, the lady's ex husband or man, was no longer in the picture. He had moved on and had another family. The lady never remarried, and she just had her two boys from that connection. Um, or she had her two boys. I can't remember the dynamics. It was so long ago. But one son wound up being murdered. So she only had this particular son, who I wound up taking a verbal oath and vow with, and then we had sex. We did not have any written ketubah, though I wanted to get that. We did not do that. And at the time, he didn't seem very pressed to do it. It was more like he was still trying me out or testing me on whether or not I'd be a good fit for him as a wife. But we had already had sex. And we had already had a conversation prior to having sex saying, okay, if we do this, and it was random conversations like during our friendship, it was like, if we do this, we know what this is and we're going to look at it and operate as such. And we had both agreed. That changed when shit hit the fan. So if I haven't made it clear, what I believe is that I think that what I wish I knew is that we would have needed to have just more time to court one another instead of just moving off of the initial excitement that there's this other person who believes like me similarly. um I also wish that I would have known that this is a journey where you don't get it right just because you know who you are. It's like you fall down and you get up and you have to keep on getting up over and over again. It's not at all a walk of perfection, but the fact that you are walking, the fact that you really do your best to keep the Torah in all of your endeavors, this is what makes you a perfect person. That you are in pursuit of the perfection. And we just didn't know each other enough. I don't think we trusted each other enough, even though my behind was like, I wanted to try to make it work to the best of my ability, but at the same time, I had my understanding of the word, and that was a big thing that was different. So another thing that I wish I knew is that you can understand that you are a descendant, but you could have doctrinal differences, which could also be huge in either causing division within your connection or, you guys being one mind. So, because I just assumed, and it wasn't an assumption, but at the time when we were getting to know one another, we seemed to have very, very similar ideas. Okay. But the one thing that I really can't recall us talking about was, how did he feel about leaving his mother and cleaving to his wife? So this was one of the things that I kept arguing and saying that he wasn't doing, even though he slept with me. And even though he made up in his mind that I was supposedly going to be his wife and we were living in that way, it's like you didn't start to make even plans for that to happen. It turns out that he was fully dependent upon his mother and her money. But he also felt obligated to his mom because of the love that he has, the respect that he has, the fact that he's aware she's an older woman. It's only me as her son. I'm her only surviving son. So I do understand certain aspects, but I felt like in certain ways his mom still has so much of influence, if you will, and so much to say and to interject sometimes in our connection, and then he would go to her with some of the things that I was talking about. And it makes sense because she's been his voice of guidance, she's been his voice of reason for all of his entire life, right? And here I am, this new person. But my argument was, that, hey, you were in this decision making process with me and you trusted me enough to lay down with me and to have sex with me, and you thought that I had a sharp mind prior to that. So why is it now that I'm requiring of you to move the way that the word says move? Because here's the thing, the Bible gives scenarios and it's like cases, right? And you're supposed, like, based upon your case, you use precedents. It's like law. You use precedences that have already been set, but you can use them to give you an example of how to rule in your case. In our case, we were two single people who decided that we wanted to have sex with each other and that we liked each other. We liked the way apparently our minds worked at the time, the way that we saw the word, the way that we were enthused about the word and walking it out. We thought that was attractive and we wanted to be with each other in that way, intimately. So in order to be able to have sex with each other, we both supposedly decided that we were going to live together as husband and wife. And so what was to govern that is that since we made the vow and we did have sex consummating the vow, we then were supposed to take the next steps to solidify the union. And that's what did not happen. After we had sex, yeah, he told people that I was his wife at our workplace, in our community of other people that were living abroad. We lived abroad. We were expats in Amman, Jordan. Basically, we told our peers that we were living together as husband and wife, and we told the people who we worked with. So they knew us as that as well. So that would really indicate even common law to this day in the States. That was really what it took. The issue was we did not finish, and I wanted to, but he, on the other hand, did not. And every time that he had to potentially solidify the union, he did not. So, of course, that made me very uneasy. It made me very uncomfortable. I went and spoke with different elders within our community, wanting them to talk to him, wanting them to even talk to me and give me some understanding. Like, am I wrong for desiring this or what? All in all, I wasn't wrong for desiring it, I was told, but I couldn't press the issue either because, he's the man, he's the head, he's the lead. But for me, that left me in a vulnerable place because at this point, even though you're calling me your wife, you could leave me at any time. And at this point, I have become a whore in a way in our community. And that's something that the word of God says not to create in the daughters of Zion. Don't make them out to be whores. So in essence, he was doing that, or at least that was my doctrinal opinion. Eventually, this became a huge breakdown in our relationship. He also began to nitpick me apart and say, oh, well, you don't cook really good. You don't clean good. You don't do all these things right. And then he also was saying you're contentious and you're worldly because you like to wear makeup or you like to look nice and all that. So that was something, these were all things that he started to use to say that I'm not his wife anymore and that it was over. Eventually, him and his mother, they left me in the apartment that at one time we all shared together. I did not have a job yet. I was just starting one, but I did not have a job to where I could cover everything myself and be okay. So I was abandoned basically, and then I was left to fend for myself. It was very devastating, a very devastating experience. However, it was very eye-opening. And so for me, I feel that I learned, and what I wish I knew before getting into a relationship as a Hebrew Israelite, I wish that I understood that just because people call themselves Hebrew Israelites, it does not mean that they're going to obey Torah. It simply doesn't mean that. It just means that this is what they say that they believe, that they are a part of that community. And ultimately, like I said before, you guys have got to take the time to learn whether or not you really see the word in the same way. I also wish that I would have trusted my intuition more, because some of the things that I noticed that I picked up off of discerning him and his mother's dynamic was that he was not a leader. He was not a man who could stand on his own yet. It came across like his mother had most of the control because she was the one who kept the money. They were living off of whatever social security and stuff like that that she already had as a retired person in the workforce. They were living off of her money. He did eventually get a job out here in Jordan, but that was never like super concrete, as we were like immigrants there. So that could fall out the window at any time. And he had not solidified himself to be able to take care of himself, let alone myself or his mother, if he should take on a wife seriously. And then his mother had a lot of influence over him. He would take a lot of the issues that we had, that I was sharing with him, based upon my doctrinal understanding of the word, and he would take it to her. And in taking it to her, she would give her opinion, and her opinion is what would usually rule and dominate. And so at that point, it made me feel like, hey, you're not married to me, you're married to your mother. And I would say that, and that was also a point of contention. So, eventually I had to learn how to shut up. It was very hard to do, so I wound up not doing that. I would do it for a space of time, but in the process, the relationship and the dynamic between even myself and his mother started to become tumultuous, because all of a sudden, like, at first she liked me, I reminded her of herself. But the moment that it meant I was speaking that, hey, you're supposed to cleave to your wife and your mother, and that she assumed that I was trying to kick her out of the way, I became her worst enemy. She also nitpicked me apart, and I couldn't do anything right. And from there, it was just a downhill roll. Okay. So I hope I have made it clear what I wish I knew before getting into a relationship as a Hebrew Israelite. So if you guys have any comments, or you want to know anything else about my experience, don't hesitate to ask. I pray that you guys are respectful and stuff like that. But yeah, these are some of the things that I wish I knew. How many things did I say? That we can have doctrinal beliefs that are different. So take the time to get to know that. That just because a man or a woman identify as an Hebrew Israelite, it doesn't mean that they're going to behave scripturally sound or just ethically. Because you don't have to go in the Bible to understand certain things ought not to be done. Like, you don't have to do that. But if you have a heart to do right, I think you will ultimately, even if it's tough. But if people don't, it doesn't matter that they identify as Hebrew Israelites. So that's the second thing I think I'm saying. That they can call themselves a Hebrew Israelite all day long, but if their actions are not lining up with, the scripture in a way, as far as like with the laws and how we're supposed to move, then we're just a Hebrew Israelite in title only and not actually living it out. 3, I feel that I wish that I understood that this was a journey, and that, we weren't always going to get it right just because we finally understood that we could have, in fact, what is the word I'm looking for? Came from those people. You understand? And it doesn't mean that we're going to get it right when we're trying to apply the laws and stuff to our lives. And that there would have been mistakes. I also, here's a 4th thing, and I'm going to leave you guys alone. I also wish that I knew before that it was more favorable, it seems, to men, and that people would turn a blind eye. So that's maybe 2 different things. I wish that I understood that it was, at the time, these things were more favorable towards men rather than the ladies, with the doctrinal beliefs that men had. It was way more skewed to men rather than protecting women and honoring them. And I also wish that I understood at the time that people would literally turn a blind eye to what a man was doing because they felt like it wasn't their business. I wish I knew that as well before entering in. These are the things that I wish I knew. I hope and pray that it makes some sense. Yeah, that's that with that. Peace, love, light, and darkness, which all work together to bring harmony, balance, and harmony, first within ourselves and then within our world. It is my pleasure to share my testimony and my story. Like I said, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to get back to them. And if you are new to my channel and you like what I've been talking about, go ahead and be sure to like this video and also subscribe if you are not yet subscribed. Bye, you guys. It is the Pretty Coach signing off.